tzarat and nega tzarat, it needs to be brought and shown to the Kohen. And the question I want to ask is why? Why is it? And I want to spend the next half hour talking about why is it that the laws of tzarat are so fundamentally different from the laws of nidah, that the Kohen needs to see it as opposed to having it described to him. Another way we could word the same question is, why is it that she is considered halachically reliable to give her own psak halacha about her status as a nidah, but no one, it's not a question of she or he, no one is considered reliable to give their own psak about the status of blemishes on the skin as to whether they're tzarat. So I think part of the answer appears in the text. At the end of Parshat Vayikra, the end of Parshat Metzora, Vayikra 15:28, describing the nidah, it says, V'safer Allah, she should count the 7 days of tahara. This is not a surprise to us. We all know the halacha, but the language, V'safer Allah, she is counting for herself. What do we mean she's counting for herself? I think what the pasuk is telling us is that the counting that she does is between her and herself. She determines her nida status, not that she has too much latitude in deciding whether she is and isn't a nida. We have certainly a very strong need for intellectual honesty, but we trust her to do it herself. V'safer Allah. She gives the psak for herself. If she doesn't know enough halacha, she goes to the local Orthodox rabbi. Or alternatively, she goes in modern times. We have many communities have yoatzot halacha, women who are specially trained to assist the women to determine their nida status. The subjectivity involved in determining the halacha is her own. What do I mean by subjectivity? She does not create the reality of the nidah. That reality is there. What she, together with her yoetzet halacha or her local rabbi, they're not creating the reality of her nidah status. She either is or isn't tame'ah or tahora. What the rabbi is doing, or what she is doing in looking at and describing her b'dikah, her blood stain on the cushion, is evaluating and analyzing that which is already there. A proper analogy, I think, would be is you have a sore throat, you go to the Kupat Cholim, they do a swab in your throat, they send it to the lab, and in the lab, they make a determination. Either you do or you do not have strep throat. But no one would suggest that the people in the lab created the reality of your strep throat. It was there. They're just revealing, based on the data provided, what is the reality. On the other hand, I think it's very, very different with tzarat. With tzarat, the patient, the victim, whatever, I don't know what word we should use for them, the subject, do not have any autonomy in the process, unlike the nidah, who has a huge amount of autonomy. First of all, if she chooses not to have her tum'ah status evaluated, in other words, if she wants to stay tme'ah, she can stay tme'ah. She's under no halachic obligation to become tahora. On the other hand, someone with a nega tzarat, v'huva la kohen, even if they don't want to go to the kohen, they are brought against their will to the kohen. There's a separate mitzvah to show the kohen the nega tzarat, or the suspected nega tzarat. And and unlike the nidah, The Kohen, to a very large degree, actually creates the reality. What we said about the Nidah is that she either is or isn't Tahora, and she goes and evaluates her status and acts appropriately. With the person with a Negat Sarat, the Kohen is so central to the process that it is not an exaggeration to say that to some degree, the Kohen creates the status of the Metzora being a Metzora. Why do I say that? It sounds a little bit radical. But the fact is that Chazal had a tradition that during the Aliyah L'Regel, the Kohanim would refuse to see Nigaim. You come to the Kohen, you make Aliyah L'Regel, you say, well, I'll go, as long as I'm going to Yerushalayim anyway, I'll find myself a Kohen and I'll show him the thing on my arm. Except during Aliyah L'Regel, the Kohanim wouldn't check Nigaim. Why? Because in case the answer would be yes, that's a very depressing status. It's very much akin to Avelut. And we don't have Avelut during Yom Tov, not during Chol HaMoed either. So to maintain the happy atmosphere of the Aliyah L'Regel, the Kohanim would not evaluate Nigaim, for example, during Aliyah L'Regel. Or let's say you lived in a place, there was no Kohen. There is no possible way for someone to become Tamei Tzarat in the absence of a Kohen. But once the Kohen sees the Nega and says, yes, that is Tzarat, the Kohen creates the reality. So unlike the Nidah, where the subjectivity of the woman herself is the primary source, she says, it was red, it was yellow, it was this big, it was that big. Her subjectivity drives the reality. Here, the subjectivity of the Kohen is what is Kovea. The autonomy that we saw with the Nidah is completely absent in the case of Tzarat. Okay, so I think I've established that, and now I have to ask again. So why? Why should that be true? To answer that question, I'd like to look at the famous story at the end of Parshat V'halotcha involving Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe. The end of Parshat V'halotcha, Bamidbar 12, beginning of the chapter. ותדבר מרים ואהרון במשה על אודות האישה הכושית אשר לקח, כי אישה הכושית לקח. ויאמרו, הרק אך במשה דיבר אדוני? הלא גם בנו דיבר, וישמע אדוני. ואיש משה עניו מאוד מכל אדם אשר על פני אדמה. ויאמר אדוני פתאום אל משה ואל אהרון ואל מרים, צאו שלושתכם אלוה המועד, ויצאו שלושתם. And God gives Miriam and Aaron a severe rebuke for speaking out against Moshe. Did they not understand the difference between their level of nevuah and Moshe's level of nevuah? Vayicharaf Adonai bam pasuk tet vayilech. Vehanan sar me'al ha'ohel. V'hinei Miriam metzorat kasheleg. Vayifen Aaron and Miriam v'hinei metzorat. Miriam is now a Metzorat. She has Tzarat as a direct punishment for her having slandered Moshe. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayomer Aaron el Moshe, Bi Adoni, al na tashet aleinu chatat, asher no'alnu, v'asher chatanu. Al nati kamet asher b'tzeto mirechem imo v'yachel achatzi b'saro. Vayitzak Moshe el Adonai lemor el narafan Allah. Aaron cries out to Moshe, and he says, we cannot ignore Miriam and leave her in this status of a Metzorat. And Chazal ask quite naturally, what is it that Aaron was upset about? Why was it such a problem for Aaron that Miriam had sarat, punishment for which she seems to have deserved? And the Midrash suggests that the problem is this. The Mishnah in Masechet Negaim, Rabbi Meir establishes lahalacha, karov pasul, a close relative, a relative who in a Beit Din Rabbani would be pasul to give a dut for the formal list of close relatives, first degree relatives. A karov, who is a kohen, cannot make pronouncements about nigaim for any of his close relatives. What's the problem in our story here? The only kohanim that exist are Miriam's close relatives. There is no mechanism to establish Miriam's status because all the kohanim are karovim to Miriam. Okay. Tosfot, Masechet Zvachim, Kuf Chaf Amud Aleph, asks this amazing question. Who cares? So there was no Kohen available who wasn't the Karov, who could possibly have diagnosed Miriam's Sarat. What difference does it make? If there's no Kohen to see her Nigaim, she's not a Tme'ah. Right? So she's not a Tme'ah. So what's Aaron's problem? Aaron goes complaining to Moshe that Miriam is going to be stuck as a Metzorat. But she's not a Metzorat at all. The only way to become a Metzora is to have a Kohen make you a Metzora. So what's the problem? So the Netziv addresses this Tosfot. Wonderful, groundbreaking shot here. The words of the Tosfot, Amar Aharon, Nimtzeti mafsid lachotenu she'eni yachol lahaskira v'lo l'tama'a v'lo l'tara. I can't do any of the things that a Kohen does for a Metzora. I can't tell her to go set herself aside for a period of 7 days to see what happens to her Tzarat. I can't declare it to be Tameh, and I can't declare it to be Tahar. Why? Because I'm a Karov. Vikshu Tosfot b'ma'ei mafsida. Hakevan she'en adam ro'at negim harehi Torah. She's Torah. What's the problem? Aval mitchila yesh lavin motza ze hadrash shamar ken Aaron. V'anyan kvar beyanu b'sefer vayikra. Di'inyan kapara shebetzarat hu minhag dinei Metzora. שמלבד ייסורים של צרת, עוד הוא ביזיון לפרסם עצמו ולשבת בדד מחוץ למחנה. The Netziv is identifying two problems, more than two, that the Miriam has here. The Metzora is not just about getting a declaration of Tameh or Tahar. There's first of all, there is the potential, the Netziv seems to be reasonably sure that being a Metzora, the act of, the status of having Tzarat is a physically uncomfortable reality. We don't know. We have no Masoret on this. But it's also disfiguring. You have these white blotches on your skin, or red or yellow. So there's the discomfort of being a Metzora that cannot be cured other than through a Kohen. But more importantly, there's an assumption that tzarat is not just a punishment, but it's a spiritual gift that God is giving us to help us correct our improper spiritual behaviors. Tzarat is a divine sign to guide us to go back to proper spiritual path. And the absence of a Kohen to make the declaration of Tzarat and lead the Metzora through the process of Ta'ara, there is no kapara. And the person stays in the status of a Mukhusar kapara, someone who has sinned but has no way of rectifying the sin. And then he continues. In the beginning of Sefer Shemot, there's an incident where Moshe, directed by God, puts his hand inside his shirt, and it comes out Metzora kasheleg, and it passes immediately. Moshe is apparently quite alarmed by his hand becoming white like snow in the like tzarat, but it passes immediately. And all Moshe suffered was the short-term, temporary tzarat. And as Rashi explains it, why does Moshe get this tzarat on his hand, short-term and temporary as it was? Because he said Lashon Hara about Bnei Israel. He said to God, but they're not going to believe me. That was Lashon Hara. So Moshe, even though he was completely speaking the truth, was somewhat punished for saying Lashon Hara about Bnei Israel, and he had a short-term self-resolving tzarat. Masha'en came. Motzi Shemra, Hainu Lashon Hara b'sheker, Eino mitkaper adshia noheg Torah mithametzora. The Netziv is saying a tremendous chiddush here that is completely his own. There's no actual basis for this in Divrei Chazal, but it rings true anyway. What the Netziv is saying, there are two kinds of Lashon Hara. There's the classic Lashon Hara where the person is speaking about someone else, but what he's saying is true. It's not complimentary. He shouldn't be saying it, but at least he's speaking the truth. But there's another form of Lashon Hara, which we subcategorize as a Motzi Shemra, where he's speaking a lie, where the falsehood, not only are you speaking negatively about someone, but what you're saying about them is false. And says the Netziv, the only way to rectify the sin of Motzi Shemra is to go through the process of tzarat. And here, in the case with Miriam and Aaron, me'ata, im hayu Aaron v'Miriam medabrim al Moshe davar emet, hayta kapara shalem b'tzarat l'chud, it would have been enough. They got tzarat, it self-resolves and we're fine. Aval keshidiber below emet, when they spoke falsely about Moshe, harezeh b'chlal hotzaat shemra, onsha b'nei tzarat, uvelo ze ein la kapara. Miriam is in a really bad position here. Because what Miriam had spoken about Moshe was a falsehood, she can only achieve kapara through the process of tzarat. And in the absence of a Kohen who was not karov to Miriam, there's no way she can enter into the process of the kapara of tzarat. So that's the Netziv's first explanation of what it was the problem for Miriam when she had this tzarat. וביקש אהרון ממשה שלא יהיה חושב חתם בכלל מוציא שם רע, אלא בכלל לשון הרע. And Aaron is begging of Moshe to consider the Motzi Shemra that Miriam had said, not as a Motzi Shemra, not as a falsehood, but merely Lashon Hara, to accept it as a form of truth, and thereby somehow mitigating Miriam's sin. V'izbir hatam, שהרי מוציא שמרה הוא ביזיון שיודע שאינו כן הוא מדבר, מה שאין כן המה, אך נועלנו, we were just talking stupidly. We actually believed what we were saying was true. We were not speaking with malice. And therefore, Aaron is begging of Moshe to, at some level, forgive Miriam and to treat it as if she was trying to speak the truth, and therefore she somehow can resolve her sin without having to go through the process of tzarat, which she literally can't because there's no Kohen to declare her tzarat. The Netziv continues in Parshat Ki Tetzei. At the end of Parshat Ki Tetzei, again we have tzarat. Hishamer b'nega tzarat l'shmor mod v'lasot k'chol asher yoru etchem ha'kohanim ha'levim kasher tzivitim tishmuru lasot. Zachor et asher asa Adonai Elohecha l'Miriam b'derech b'tzeitechem b'Mitzrayim. That's the end of that little section. Two psukim, one that says to follow the instructions of the Kohen and the Levi in dealing, the Kohanim who are Leviim, in dealing with the Neged Tzarat, and to remember Miriam. I mean, that's Miriam who had Tzarat. It's clearly connected to Lishmor Ma'od V'Lasot. Miriam had Tzarat. And what the Netziv says here, Zachor, Lefi Pshat Inyan HaKatuv, Sharei Eino Medaber B'Inyan Lashon Hara, Ela B'Shmirat Dinei Tzarat. ולי נראה, אף על פי שביארנו בספר במדבר, דארון ביקש ממשה שלא יחשוב לעבוד מה שנועלנו להוציא שם רע, זה העוון חמור מלשון הרע לחוד. לחוד he means בלבד. ואינו מתכפר אלא בתורת המצורע, ולא בצרת לחוד. והנה הקדוש ברוך הוא לא קיבל בקשת אהרון, ואמר, תיסגר מרים, ודן אותה בעונש מוציא שם רע. אף אגב שבשוגג וטעות דיברה על משה בשקר, ובחטאים שבין אדם לחברו, אדם מועד לעולם בין שוגג בין מזיד.
נו, אתה כותב לי, גידיה.
וזהו דבר כתוב כאן.
אתה מוכן רגע לקבל?
ולא יקל בעצמו, and this is such a brilliant two sentences from the Netziv. שלא יקל בעצמו ויחשוב, וכבר יש לו כפרה בצער צרת לחוד, ואין צריך עוד לטיפול דיני צרת, לא כן הדבר. זכור את אשר עשה השם למרים בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים, שגם היא חשבה לדון בעוון הקל ולא הועיל לה. There's a tremendous musar that the Netziv is teaching us here about sin, kapara, lashon hara, the subjectivity of self-evaluation. What the Netziv is teaching us here is the answer to the first half of the shiur today. Why is it that a tamei nidah is authorized to trust herself, to give her own psak halacha on her own nigaim, whereas for tzarat, even though it's also about colors and stains, we need the intermediary of the kohen in order to achieve our kapara. And I think what the Netziv is telling us is very instructive. There's a statement, my grandmother used to say this to me all the time. I don't know what she really was talking about, but she said it all the time. It's a statement from the Gemara, but I don't know what she meant by it. Adam karov la'atzmo. A man is always his own karov. In other words, we don't have objectivity when it comes to ourselves. We have huge blind spots when it comes to ourselves. And just like we said that a karov, a kohen who is a karov, is pasul to check the negaim of the Metzora, so too we individually are so blinded to our own spiritual states that we cannot do our own evaluation of our nigaim, literally in the context of tzarat, but homiletically, we do not really possess the self-awareness and intellectual honesty to truly self-evaluate our behaviors, especially in the context of Lashon Hara. And Lashon Hara, let's remember, as the Netziv said, has two categories: when it's true and it's not true. When it's not true, it goes over the line into Motzi Shemra, but it's still Lashon Hara. But even when it is true, the fact that it's true is not some general matir. You can say whatever you want, but it's true. Of course it's true. It's still Lashon Hara. If it wasn't true, that's twice as bad. But Lashon Hara, by definition, is something that's true, and it's still forbidden. Why is it forbidden? I think we can, again, maybe a little bit homiletically, go back to the question of subjectivity. What is the sin of Lashon Hara? What's the problem with Lashon Hara? It's that we are applying our subjectivity to someone else's life. I have arrogated to myself the right to evaluate someone else's appearance, thought process, behavior, social status, all sorts of things that I've decided I have the right to evaluate through my subjective vision and impose my values on this other person. So Lashon Hara is first and foremost a sin of subjectivity. And not only that, not only have I imposed my values on the victim of the Lashon Hara, I've imposed them on the listener. The listener hears it. You can't unhear things. You can't forget them. It becomes part of your view of this other person. And now both the speaker and the listener of Lashon Hara have imposed their subjectivity on the victim of the Lashon Hara. That kind of sin we cannot leave in the hand of the sinner to make their own evaluation as to their status. We need a Kohen. We need an objective outsider to come in and look at the nega tzarat. And it's not, the Kohen is not merely looking at the white spot on the sin and saying, yup, that's tzarat. Because that's only half the Kohen's job. The other half of the Kohen's job, the more important half, is to lead the sinner through a process of tshuva. In the absence of tshuva, the blemish will not go away. The nega stays, and it stays again, and they reevaluate every 7 days. The Kohen is to lead the sinner through a process of tshuva, at the end of which, if he has succeeded, and the same divine grace that gave him the tzarat will heal his tzarat, then the Kohen can pronounce him to be tahor, and he achieves his kapara. But that requires an outsider. And then Netziv added something else. The key to this is the publicity of it. You might say, okay, I've sinned. That's a problem between me and myself, between me and God. Me and God, we're going to work this out. And what the Netziv is teaching us about the tzarat is that this is not something you can work out in private. This is not just between you and God. The humiliation of being forced to say in public, I am michutz lamachaneh. I am not fit to go in public. I am not fit to be with Bnei Israel. I need to live outside the city. And everyone needs to know. He needs to cover his mouth and mumble, and he announced, V'tamei tamei yikra. He needs to call out to everyone who tries to come close to him, stay away from me, I am tamei. I am a sinner. I have sinned. He needs to publicly acknowledge his sin. He can't simply say, this is between me and God. So the Metzora needs to turn to the Kohen to first admit to the Kohen that he sinned. When the Kohen says to the sinner, why is it that you have tzarat? He needs to admit to the Kohen, I've done kach v'kach. That's a very painful thing for any of us to do. And then he has to do it in public. Maybe he doesn't have to spell out the sin to the public, but he certainly has to spell out in public, I am a sinner. I am a Metzora. Tamei yikra. Stay away from me. I have sinned. I have sinned in a sin, and Chazal give us a whole list of sins for which tzarat could be the source of the sin. And none of those sins are the kind of things that we want to admit in public that we did. So part of the kapara is being forced to confront the sin, to admit it in public, to admit that this is not something I can deal with myself. I have no subjectivity here. I need to hand myself over to an outsider, the Kohen, who declares my tzarat, who declares my tum'ah, who guides me through a path of tshuva and kapara, which brings us back to the original Gemara. Yes, nida and tzaraat are spiritual states that involve colors and stains and evaluations. But one of them is v'safer Allah. She can count, she can be trusted, she can self-evaluate, at the end of which she takes herself to the mikvah. She does her tefillah. She doesn't need to tell anyone at all about it. And it's over and done with, at the end of which she is tahorah. Because she didn't do anything wrong. Her nidah is simply a reality. Whereas the sinner, who is a Metzora, he is not given the autonomy. He cannot be trusted with the subjectivity. He needs an outsider to guide him through the process. And indeed, the Gemara asks, so like the Nidah, can the Metzora describe his nega to the Kohen and on that basis receive the Psak Halacha? Absolutely not. Because the status of a Metzora and a Nidah are so completely different. And thanks to the Netziv, I think we have a good understanding of why that is so, and a whole lot for us to think about ourselves, about our own intellectual honesty and subjectivity in dealing with our own spiritual states between us and God. Erev Tov.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Good, thank you.
How do we get out of here?